one of the easiest thing that you can do, you can really sell your expertise. And it doesn't matter whether you are a product business or a service business.
Today we have Sam Gupta, the CEO of Elevatiq. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. I am super excited to talk to your fun listeners.
Yeah, I'm excited as well. Tell us about your business.
Yeah, so we have, and I don't know if your listeners are going to be familiar with something called ERP system. ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning. Typically, when businesses grow from, let's say, $5 to $10 million mark, they need slightly more integrated system to be able to process their orders, to be able to fulfill those orders, to be able to do the accounting, financial statement. It's going to be more of the operating system for the business. That's so we do a lot of different things, from the selecting the right system to optimizing the infrastructure. Let's say if they are looking for implementing any of these systems, we help with that.
Ah, fantastic. And Sam, how did you get started in that?
Well, so I actually started as the consultant, but before that, I grew up in a very manufacturing environment. So I was lucky to be born in a family, where we did manufacturing as a child, to be honest. Okay. So I did accounting as a child, I did manufacturing as a child. So by the time I went to my school for the professional education, I knew way too much that a kid should know. Okay. And after that, I got into consulting, and as part of the consulting, I was doing a lot of digital transformation work, fairly similar to what I am doing as of today. Most of the time, the scope of those engagements are going to be, if any of the businesses are going through digital transformation journey, they need somebody's help to be able to understand why these systems are not working, what kind of systems to procure, how these systems are going to work together, and what can we do so that we can get return of our technology investments.
Yeah, that's that, which is really important because going through that digital transformation journey, it can be a tough process for some companies, and so having that external expertise is really important, isn't it?
It's extremely important, and the reason for that is because, see, if you want to be successful with these initiatives, what you need to have is you need to have a lot of implementations under your belt. For example, let's say if you look at a person who has been, let's say, inside the manufacturing company, typically they are going to be going over 3, 4, 5 implementations throughout their career, and sometimes it's very, very, very hard for them to be able to find these best practices that is going to be required when you are going to be implementing these systems. So unless you have seen, let's say, 200, 300, 500,000 implementations, it's very, very, very hard to, number one, build a consensus. And typically the problem, most of the time in our engagement, is going to be related to training, coaching. I mean, we very rarely do the real technology work. Most of the time, it is really going to be how to bring people to the same dinner table so that they can eat together. When you have your marketing, when you have your operations, finance, they typically like to eat alone. They don't like to hang out together, in the same party.
Yeah, exactly. And it is incredibly important, obviously, to have everybody on the same page when you're making any kind of change in any kind of organization, which is good. So, Sam, where do you think you can bring the most value to the marketplace?
So when you talk about value, our value is going to be really in form of getting the real ROI from these investments. And sometimes people talk, you will hear, all over, in the marketplaces, in the media, hey, digital transformation is so cool, AI is so cool, robotics is so cool. But most of the time, these people don't know how much effort is going to be involved in executing in those transformations, and how much expertise you really require to be able to go through the process if you want to get real ROI. Let me give you some numbers from the market. If you actually
Mm,
talk to anybody in the market, they'll tell you that roughly 70 to 80% of the digital transformation initiatives fail, and those are real facts, to be honest. Okay. And I see this on
wow.
a daily basis. That's reality. So now if 70 to 80% of the digital transformation initiatives are failing, there's something fundamentally off about how these systems are selected, how companies are going through them. So our value is really going to be in bringing that percentage down to, let's say, 20%. I'm not going to say that we have 100% success, because you have people component involved, and when you have people component involved, it's much harder to execute these things, because again, our role is going to be to bring everybody to the same dinner table, so that they can eat together first. Once they learn how to eat together, then we can probably digitize their experience.
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah, which is a really solid plan. So I'm interested, Sam, what had to change in you personally that took you from where you were kind of starting out to where you are now as a successful CEO of a fast growing company?
Yeah, so I am going to talk about the same mistake that most people make when they start out. And I was just this arrogant, and I'm going to use that word, programmer, or a technical guy who was super competent on the technical skills. And I was like, I could solve any problem in this world using the power of technology. And that's the mistake that most people make. Then they first time get into technology, maybe in their first 5 years, the technology problems are going to be far bigger, because they are going to be related to people, they are going to be related to training, they are going to be related to adoption, and there is no shortcut to it. So the more gentle you are, even though you might be super expert, but what you really need to have is going to be your people skills, the sales
Mm.
skills. Because even if you are not selling, the externally, you are still selling across the stakeholders. You are probably talking to the boards, and you are talking to the janitor as well. So personally, that's been my transformation, that I have learned it a big way, and now I talk from a very pragmatic standpoint, as if I am the CFO myself, and how I would be planning my budget, as opposed to saying, hey, this technology is cool, you customer, you should be implementing that today, or you are going to be bankrupt. I mean, that's how most technology people talk. But that does not fly. With most CFOs, they need to be pragmatic, they need to be practical with the adoption approach.
Exactly, and to really heavily consider the people element and the change management as part of that.
Could not agree more. I mean, that's where I am actually going to mention a story that of the recent engagement with a customer. And in this particular case, I think they are at roughly $2 million investment. This is a very small system that they bought, and typically most vendors in the market are going to claim that, what, they can implement in 90 days or 30 days or 60 days. You are going to be off to the races. Okay, when you do that, at the end of the day, people need to be operating on these systems. Okay, you are talking about that salesperson who is going to be cutting that sales order on a specific system. Unless you go easy on them, it's going to be very hard. So in this specific story, they are roughly 2 years in the implementation. They have invested roughly $2 million. Things are still not working, they are still struggling to process a simple sales order. Can you believe this? Okay, they don't have any sort of processes that are documented. So if a consultant like me comes and I am going to have a million questions, if you actually don't go through the process, if you are going to bypass any of the process, it's going to be terribly difficult. Whoever is going to be taking over, because now they are actually trying to fix the broken house. And by the way, that broken house is actually live right now. People are still living in that. And when you are going to fix that house, when people are going to be living, it's going to be far more challenging. If nobody was there, then it's a different case. But in this particular case, it's a broken house that we are trying to fix. People are living. It's just crazy, crazy, scenario. So the only advice I'm going to have for people who are going through the digital transformation journey: go easy on yourself. Try to implement that on a piece of paper first, before you actually introduce a real system.
Yeah, exactly. I heard once. I think that there's a saying floating around that says, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional, then wait till you hire an amateur. And all of the fix-ups, all of the changes, all of the adjustments, because it just wasn't done right the first time. It usually ends up being more expensive in the end.
Could not agree more. And people who are going to be doing this on a daily basis, they are going to have a lot of stories they can talk about, and they can talk about those stories in real depth. If you are going to have an inexperienced person or the amateur, as you mentioned, they are going to be using a lot of buzzwords, to be honest, because they don't know what they are going to be getting into, and they are not going to have real deep stories, when you talk to them.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, Sam, could you give us maybe your biggest insight that gave you the biggest and most dramatic growth for your business?
So, my personal insight in my case, one of the mistakes that I had always made is, if you look at our sales cycle is very long. This is one of the most difficult offering anybody could ever sell. Okay, that's how difficult
Mm,
it is. Because the reason why it
wow.
is so difficult is, number one, we are actually shaking the foundation of the company. Okay, it is, even if I'm closing, let's say, $10,000 deal, it is really shaking the foundation of the company. Secondly, we are going to be changing people's habits. As long as you are not changing that, everybody's going to be cool. As long as you are going to be telling them, you know what, this is how you are supposed to be doing sales. This is how you are supposed to be doing marketing. This is how you are supposed to run the operations. Now, people are going to be slightly, nervous about that. So that's the reason why it is super difficult from the sales cycle perspective. And we were always very sales centric from the business perspective. We were doing a lot of outbound. We had really good name in the community, and one of the things that I had always ignored is the inbound marketing, because I was always thinking, you know what, if I am going to be writing a piece of blog, somebody's going to come to my site when I'm actually calling them. That's not going to fly with a lot of people. But you know what? So this has been my biggest mistake, my personal mistake. And then slowly and gradually, when we started getting into the inbound marketing, and thanks to COVID, because of that, we started having a lot more time. We started writing everything that we knew, and you have no idea the kind of wonders it has done for our business. So we started with blog, then we started with podcasts. Right now we have roughly, what, 200 different podcasts. I'm known as one of the top ERP thought leader. Everybody's sort of inviting me to their shows. So, that's how much the inbound marketing has helped. And that's been my biggest mistake in this particular business.
Yeah, I love that because you're taking control then of your business growth. So, what advice, Sam, would you give to a business owner or CEO who wants to break through to their next level?
Yeah, so the my advice is always going to be, when, let's say, if you are going to be, let's say, at an inflection point. So most of the businesses, the way they start is, they are going to start in their community. If you are going to have slightly more service centric business, then you are probably going through your personal relationship, the people you have worked with. You don't really have your sales and marketing model figured out. So unless you figure that out, and the best way to figure this out is going to be when you are going to be really small, when you are not going to be as big as, some of the other companies, when you don't really have brand presence. One of the easiest thing that you can do, you can really sell your expertise. And it doesn't matter whether you are a product business or a service business. And when I say selling the expertise, I am actually going to reference, the marketing thought leader genius Neil Patel. The way Neil Patel approaches things, whatever you are talking about, go in real depth, because nobody is going to be able to match that. Those bigger companies are never going to be able to find time to be able to produce that much content, because they are busy calculating ROI of the marketing efforts. You, as the entrepreneur, you don't have to worry as much about the ROI, because by default you are probably going to be spending 15 hours a day. So one thing that you could do to build that long-term IP or the asset is just figure out how you can dump your brain down in the form of blog or in the form of podcast or video, whatever you can do. Just build that long term asset, and that is going to pay you off in the long term.
That is great advice, and yeah, a lot of our clients actually take that model, and we actually do that ourselves. So, Sam, I'm totally on board with. There's actually a good book called Utility, YO Utility, I think it is, and he says that exact thing, what you've just said. To be that center of influence, to be that trusted advisor in the space. So finally, Sam, who can you best help? And if they want to get in touch, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so for me, my customers are going to be any of the manufacturers, distributors, retailers, e-commerce companies. If they are going through their digital transformation journey, and I am going to be very specific with respect to digital transformation world. We focus primarily on the business systems. So if you have any sort of inventory challenges, order management challenges, fulfillment challenges, that's where we can really help. The best way to reach me is going to be Google myself. It's that easy. Okay, I'm super popular. Okay, just type Sam, SAM. The last name is going to be Gupta, Gupta. WBS Rocks is the name of the podcast and the community, and you are going to find the first profile on LinkedIn. On Google itself, that's going to be the first profile that you are going to get. But I we have the domain name called WBS.ROCKS rocks. Fill out the contact form there, and we'll get in touch with you. And the business name is Elevate IQ, ELEVATIQ, elevateiq.com. Fill out the contact form. We'll get in touch with you.
Wonderful. Sam, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate what you've given us today. Thank you.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. Really enjoyed your show.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. Thanks, Sam.